production capacity. Further noting that the low local production leads to high costs for farmers, reducing their profits and results in an unhealthy reliance on imported fertilizer. Concerned that the scenario threatens the country's food security in case of supply disruption and discourages local production, recognizing that local fertilizer production could lead to improved fertilizer quality. Increased crop yields and reduction in environmental harm caused by the use of substandard fertilizer. Another motion in discussion today is motion number 35 of 2023, the government-to-government G2G model to acquire and supply fertilizers to farmers at subsidized costs. This is a motion by the Honorable Geoffrey Ruku MP. That aware that Kenya is an agricultural-based economy with a significant portion of its population relying on farmers for their livelihood, noting that the quality and quantity of crop yield in Kenya has been hampered to a large extent by lack of adequate and quality fertilizers, leading to decreasing agricultural productivity and economic losses. Further noting that the government has committed to improving agricultural productivity through various initiatives, including provision of subsidized fertilizer, concerned that the cost, quantity, and quality of fertilizers, and subsequently the cost of production of food crop and cash crop, including coffee, tea, and miraa, has increased due to a number of factors. Among them, high cost of fertilizers due to markup by private fertilizers suppliers, further concerned that a threat to food security is a threat to national security. Recognizing that the government-to-government model has been noted to lower cost of production, further recognizing that there are countries willing to enter into a G2G agreement, appreciating that G2G has been proven to be effective in provision of services that have a direct impact of citizens' livelihood, including the cost of living, such as the supply of fertilizers, particularly in countries with similar agricultural conditions as Kenya. This House therefore resolves that the government, through the Ministry of Agriculture and Livestock Development and its agencies, adopts, number 1, the government-to-government model in the acquisition of supply of fertilizers by identifying potential partner countries that have surplus and quality fertilizers. And 2, a comprehensive program for government-to-government acquisition and distribution of fertilizers through, among others, Kenya Farmers Association, KFA, Kenya Tea Development Agency, KTDA, Coffee Board of Kenya, Kenya Planters Cooperative Union, KPCU, Kenya Growers Cooperation Union, Pyrethrum Board of Kenya for increased agricultural productivity. The quorum bell is still on. The Speaker has ordered for the quorum bell to be rung for 10 minutes, and members of Parliament are making their way into the chamber. The number of MPs that are supposed to be in the chamber is 50, and as you can see on your screens, members are making their way in. I'll continue to take you through some of the business that is going to be discussed today. And a motion to be discussed also is the establishment of a national policy to combat disrespectful childbirth practices in Kenya. This is a motion by the Honorable Gathoni Wamuchomba, MP. That aware that Article 41(3)(a) of the Constitution provides for the right of every person to access the highest attainable standard of health. Further aware that poor quality of health services, especially maternal care, has been a recurring concern among women in the country. Noting that there is increased pre- and postpartum mistreatment and dehumanized care of women by healthcare providers. also known as obstetric violence, OBV. Further noting, obstetric violence includes but is not limited to disrespectful and abusive behavior, physical and verbal abuse, neglect, forced medical procedures, humiliation, and assault in health care settings, concerned that sustained class-based disparities shape different maternal and impact health outcomes, with women of low socioeconomic status experiencing greater level of obstetric violence. Further concerned that this not only affects women's physical and mental health, but also impacts on the overall health outcomes of mothers and their newborns, significantly contributing to high maternal mortality rates. Cognizant of the fact that there exists no national policy or framework to address and prevent obstetric violence, now therefore this House resolves that the national government, through the Ministry of Health, Development, a policy and prevention of obstetric violence in healthcare facilities in the country, and provides a framework for regular monitoring and reporting of cases to curb indecency or pre- and postpartum mistreatment on women seeking health services. The quorum bell still continues as the House seeks to have quorum. This is the quorum is under the standing orders, standing order number 34, quorum of commencement of the House, which says that a quorum of the House of the quorum during proceeding of the House, I beg your pardon, is that any time after the chair is taken or when the House, I beg your pardon, this is according to standing order number 34 of the standing orders of the House. Allow me to take you through some of the motions that are still going to be discussed. Another motion is the review of the eligibility age for enrollment of older members of the society to the Inua Jamii Cash Transfer Program, a motion by the Honorable Majimbo Kalasinga, MP. That aware that Article 57 of the Constitution provides that the state shall take measures to secure the rights of older persons to live in dignity and receive reasonable care and assistance from the state, noting that to actualize the provision of Article 57 of the Constitution, the government rolled out the Inua Jamii Cash Transfer Program in 2015 to provide regular and predictable cash transfers to older persons aged 70 years and above and who are not in receipt of a civil service pension. Appreciating the success of the program has recorded in alleviating poverty and suffering among older members of the society since its inception, noting that the government intends to progressively net more vulnerable and underprivileged members of the society with a view of reaching 2.5 million beneficiaries in the next 3 years. Concerned that with respect to eligibility to the program for older members of society, the guidelines requires that to have attained the age of 70 years, noting that Article 260 of the Constitution defines an older member of society as one who has attained the age of 60 years, concerned that capping the eligibility for enrollment to the Inua Jamii program at the age of 70 years is discriminatory to the older members of society and negates the spirit of Constitution entitling support to older members of the society. Now, therefore, this House urges the national government, through the Ministry of Labour and Social Protection, to revise the age requirement for eligibility of elder members to be enrolled to the Inua Jamii program from 70 years to 60 years in line with the Constitution. The quorum bell is still being run. This is according to Standing Order number 34 of the National Assembly, which says if there is no quorum present when the chair is taken at the time appointed for meeting of the House, immediately after the saying of the prayer, the Speaker shall order the bell to be rung for 10 minutes. And from the screens, we can see that the quorum has been achieved. Allow me to hand you over. Enjoy your viewing.
Honorable members, I think we are now quoted. Could you please take your seats so that we may start the proceedings of today? Order, Ndahi Kandenda. The member for order, Ndahi Kandenda, sit down. Let's proceed.
Order number 1, administration of oath. Order number 2, communication from the chair. Order number 3, messages. Order number 4, petitions. Order number 5, papers.
The Honorable Deputy Majority Leader.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I would like to beg to lay the following papers on the table of the House today, Wednesday, June 12th, 2024 morning sitting. Honorable Speaker, I lay as follows. Reports of the Auditor General and financial statements for the year ended 30th June 2023 and the certificates therein in respect of 1. Kenya Insurance Corporation Limited, 2. Media Council of Kenya, 3. Auctioneers Licensing Board, 4. Kenya Rural Roads Authority, 5. Kenya Civil Aviation Authority, 6. Kenya Airports Authority, 7. National Transport and Safety Authority, 8. National Cereals and Produce Board, 9. Meru National Polytechnic, and 10. National Drought Management Authority. Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. I beg to lay.
Thank you. Papers are so laid. Next.
Order number 6, notices of motion. Order number 7, questions and statements.
Honorable members, from your order papers, we have statements from 2 members. I'll start with the member for Bobasi, if he's in the House, the Honorable Innocent Momanyi. Is the member for Bobasi in the House? It's a statement you're supposed to... Okay, just sit on your seat, they'll give you a copy. The Honorable Member for Isiolo County. Honorable Mumina, are you ready? Proceed.
Honorable Speaker, pursuant to the provisions of Standing Order 44-2C, I rise to request for a statement from the chairperson of the Departmental Committee on Education regarding the preparedness of schools to deal with the effects of the recent heavy rains and associated challenges that came with it. Honorable Speaker, the recent heavier than normal rains that pounded various parts of the country caused flash floods that affected school infrastructure and destroyed roads, thereby rendering some schools inaccessible. In Merti and Sericho sub-counties in Isiolo County, the Wasonyiro broke its banks and caused heavy floods that affected infrastructure in the following schools. 1, Khalifa Abubakar Primary and Junior School. 2, Mercy South Muslim Girls Primary School. 3, Mercy Muslim Primary and Junior School. 4, Gamachu Primary and Junior School. 5, Mulanda Nur Primary School. 6, Bahari Girls Primary and Junior Secondary School. 7, Bilikinur Mixed Secondary School. 8, Resaboru Primary School. 9, Malkamansa Primary School. And 10, Sericho Primary School. Honorable Speaker, if the effect of flooding in the named schools are not addressed, they will negatively impact on school attendance and cause high dropout rates and poor academic performance. Honorable Speaker, it is against this backdrop that I seek a statement from the chairperson of the Departmental Committee on Education on the following. 1, could the ministry urgently intervene and restore infrastructure in the named schools and other schools affected countrywide, including restoration of access roads, construction of classrooms and latrines, and provision of desks, learning materials, food, sanitary towels, water tanks, and other relevant facilities in order to restore normalcy in affected schools. 2, what long-term measures has the government developed to mitigate effects of floods as a result of climate change to ensure that all school-going children are not disadvantaged again in future? I thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you. The Honorable Malulu, this I think is in your docket.
Thank you, Speaker. We'll invite the CS next week, Tuesday, if he'll be available, or Thursday, and then thereafter present a report to the House. Thank you.
Hope when you invite the PS, you also ensure that the member is duly informed so that she's present during the PS's attendance. And this should not take more than 2 weeks.
Speaker, you see we have the seven days rule when it comes to inviting CS. And the Education Committee, as usual, when we have statements, we usually call honorable members to appear before the committee instead of raising statements with us. Then the chair presents a statement to the House, which becomes also new to the member himself or herself. We have done it before, and that's what we do as a practice. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Member for Bobasi, I hope you're now ready.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I stand to request for a statement regarding the reconstruction of a collapsed bridge in Nyamache Town, Bobasi constituency. Honorable Speaker, pursuant to the provisions of Standing Order 44-2C, I rise to request for a statement from the chairperson of the Departmental Committee on Transport and Infrastructure regarding reconstruction of a collapsed bridge in Nyamache Town within Bobasi constituency. Honorable Speaker, the bridge located in Nyamache Town is a critical infrastructure for the residents of Bobasi constituency as it serves as the principal route between the town and the neighboring areas, and most importantly, the commercial and the administrative section of the town. However, the bridge was swept away by flash floods that occurred in the area in 2023, thereby crippling the transportation system. Honorable Speaker, it's regrettable that despite the collapse of the bridge having been reported to the Kenya Rural Roads Authority, KERA, regional office in Kisii, via my letter reference number KERRA/Kisii/RD, volume 3, /38, date 4th March 2023, KERA has neither taken any action nor provided alternative solution to the residents. Consequently, they are forced to travel for over 3 kilometers to access an alternative bridge, which is also in very poor state, thereby posing a risk to their lives and goods. Honorable Speaker, it's against this background that I seek a statement from the chairperson of the Departmental Committee on Transport and Infrastructure on the following. Why has the Kenya Rural Authority, KERA, taken inordinately long to reconstruct the bridge in Yamache town since its destruction by floods was reported in 2023? Could the KERA headquarters in Nairobi release emergency funds totaling 19,271,254 for the immediate reconstruction of the bridge? State the measures put in place to reconstruct the said bridge and provide timelines within which the bridge will be reconstructed in order to address the plight of the residents of Nyamache town. I thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, the Chairman of Infrastructure Transport Committee, the Honorable Komingoi.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, you'll give us 2 weeks to be able to get the response from the said agency and report back to the member.
You've heard that? He says within 2 weeks, I'll go back to you. Yes, Honorable Gisario.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I would like to rise to state that going by this statement, Mr. Speaker, we are just coming from very heavy rains nationally, which have destroyed most of our roads. But, Mr. Speaker, it's of concern that as we sit here today, around 20% of KERA money has not been remitted to the constituencies to assist members to fix the roads. We are here to discuss roads and being told we're going to get responses after 2 weeks. Yet there is money that's still stuck at KERA headquarters and not going to the constituencies to help these situations that are being raised here. Can we know when the monies will be dispatched to the counties, to the regional engineers, so that we are able to have our roads fixed? We are not going to sit here. The financial year is coming to an end. The money is stuck in Nairobi, and the roads we are discussing here are Maram roads that needs to be fixed. Can we know why the delay? This is the first time we are having KERA money delayed almost to the end of the financial year. There is 20% retained in Nairobi, and we'd like to know when that money will go down to the counties. Thank you.
Guna?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to add my voice on this matter, Mr. Speaker. We know the effects of just concluded rains, Mr. Speaker. And this money is actually been delaying, and we've been waited for long. We did even tendering. Contractors moved to the site. Mr. Speaker, I urge your indulgence on this matter. Ensure we get the money in the right time so that we can expedite the process of road repairs in our constituencies. Of course, the balance which is remaining is huge. We need to conclude before the end of this financial year, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. The Honorable Member, the Honorable Biagon.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I would also like to add my voice on this weighty matter, whereby, as we all know that recently we had very heavy rains. Most roads and the bridges were damaged, and including my constituency, we have the bridges which already I reported last year in 2023, mid-2023, because the roads were and the bridges were damaged. And we want a very firm statement and from the Department of Roads to tell us when the roads, the bridges, like the one for my constituency called Suguteg, Kositonik, and Kosior bridges. Chemaluktan also. There are 4 bridges which has been affected in my constituency. I need also a statement from the Department of Roads to tell us when this thing is going to be happening. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Okomingoi, today is 12th, is it 11th or 12th of June, so.
Yeah, Mr. Speaker, I reckon and I am in the same boat. I think all members in this House reckon the effects of the El Nino and the rains that really damaged our roads. It's not only the Kera roads, including the Kura roads, the urban roads, and also the highways. We met the ministry last week, and they promised to give us an action plan on the damages and especially the bridges, and the bridges that have cut off connections within communities, not only in the countryside, but also in towns. So I think, Mr. Speaker, 2 weeks will be enough for us to be able to comprehensively respond, not only to the specific question of WASI, but also to the general question on what action the ministry is going to take and what the committee is pursuing with regard to the road sector in our country. So I think 14 days will be enough. The other Thursday.
The Honorable Kumingoi, the member's concern, apart from the Honorable Member for Bobasi's concern, is the money already available and allocated to care under 22%. That is the member's concern. When is it going to the ground? Because 2 weeks is too long.
Mr. Speaker, you may be aware that last week there was a statement that had been made by the chair of Transport Committee with regards with the specific question of savings that had been purportedly been held by KERA, and engineers given instructions not to expend that money. That question was disposed of last week, that the regional engineers will have the money. The money had not been taken. They had just been instructed not to expend the funds. But the settlement of that question here in the House is that all regions ought to be having received all monies to all constituencies for the year 23-24 for the purposes of implementation of the KERA roads. That is the 22% and the 10%. The monies that were in contention was the savings out of the contracts issued, which was settled that now the constituency roads committees can be able to plan for the execution of those projects members would have identified to be used on the savings that remained as a result of the contracts that had been initially awarded in the year 2024. So as a committee, I think we're in the position that all monies have been sent to the regions, including the savings which had been instructed not to be used. But with the letter that came last week, all CRCs are now able to plan for those funds. I thank you, Chair.
Thank you. No, we will not engage on debate on that one. I think the answer is given is satisfactory to me. And the Honorable Homingo, you can see what's happening. So you need to take charge of this matter and have it dealt with as soon as possible. Next order. No, before I go to the next order, let me ask members to join me in welcoming students from these three schools seated at the public gallery. Students from St. Lucia Girls High School, Kahiti, Makueni. Students from Precious Blood, Reuta High School, Nairobi North Constituency, Nairobi. And students from Kesogon Mixed High School, Cherengani, in Tanzania. They are welcome for the proceedings of this morning, the House. I will give a minute to the member for Tanzania to welcome all these students to the House today.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this chance to welcome students from Trans Nzoia County, Kesogon Secondary. I want to welcome you to 13th Parliament. I know amongst you, we have future leaders, and as you sit here, learn something from these legislators, and from here, go work hard and work smart. If you work hard and work smart, you will be someone very important in this country in future. Welcome.
Thank you. Next order.
Order number 8, the Salaries and Remuneration Commission Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 21 of 2024, first reading. A bill for an act of parliament to amend the Salaries and Remuneration Commission Act. Order number 9, the Public Service Internship Bill, National Assembly Bill number 63 of 2022, second reading, resumption of debate.
Members, debate on this bill started on the 24th of April, and on her feet was the Honorable Member, the Honorable Naisula Lesuda, who is also the sponsor of the bill. Honorable Lesuda, this is your chance to finish moving.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity to continue moving the Public Service Internship Bill 2022. And Mr. Speaker, I had started by explaining the import of why I had thought of coming up with this bill, Mr. Speaker. And the whole essence of the bill is to establish a legal framework for the regulation of internship programs in the public service, Mr. Speaker. As it is right now, in 2013, there were regulations that were made.
Order, order. The Honorable Lesuda will be heard in silence.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In 2013, there was a directive and a policy that the interns who are recruited in the public service, Mr. Speaker, will be given a stipend. But having thought about it, Mr. Speaker, this is just a directive. It is the goodwill of the government of the day, and even the regulations that were made are not really binding. And so I thought about it, Mr. Speaker, that it is important that we come up with a legal framework of how we engage our interns, Mr. Speaker, as a country and at the public service. While I was drafting the bill, there were other ideas and suggestions that we also include the private sector, Mr. Speaker, which is actually important. But we realize that we need more engagement. We need to think through it well so that we can engage the private sector on how they can engage the interns, Mr. Speaker, and ensure that they are treated with dignity, they are given some stipend, Mr. Speaker. We also need to think about it in terms of giving incentives to the private sector so that they can be encouraged, or they can actually consider. Mr. Speaker, I would like you to, there's too much consultation, Mr. Speaker, in the House.
Honorable members, may I request the majority whip help us with lowering down the tone of consultation so that we can listen to the Honorable Lesuda. Well done.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There were arguments, Mr. Speaker, that if we ask private institutions to give a remuneration to the interns, that they may decide to not give them the opportunities to learn, and they might not be able to engage interns, Mr. Speaker. But that is not the intention. We can look at some of the incentives that we can give to the private sectors so that they can engage interns and they can also pay them a stipend just as the public service is doing, Mr. Speaker. There are countries that have done it successfully. We have South Africa, which has regulations that operate in the government, that ensures that those who are recruited in the government sector, there is a determination on the internship in the public sector made by the Minister of Public Service and Administration, and one that ensures that the contract does not exceed 12 months, Mr. Speaker, and also the interns do not receive a salary but a monthly allowance. We also have countries like Rwanda, we have countries like Argentina, we have countries which have made legislation to ensure that our interns are dignified when they are working. The bill that I have come up with, Mr. Speaker, also look at issues of mentorship so that our interns are just not thrown at public service without having proper mentorship, and for them to come out with more skills of their respective programs or their respective what they learnt in school, Mr. Speaker. And so the law will look, the act shall apply for the following categories, and these are the people who will be eligible for internship. These are unemployed graduates with appropriate skills who require practical hands-on experience to improve their chances of employment. We also have graduates with professional qualifications who are required by the professional bodies to undertake internship as a precondition for registration, or any person who has successfully completed a course of training under the Technical and Vocational Education and Training Act, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the principles that will also help to govern the internship in the public service will be to promote equity and fairness by ensuring inclusivity and accessibility of opportunities to interns from diverse backgrounds, Mr. Speaker. And this is something that as a country we must ensure that when we are giving internship opportunities in the different sectors in government spaces, we ensure that we look at inclusivity so that we make sure that children from all corners of this country are given opportunities to be interns, Mr. Speaker. We should also ensure that there is a transparent and transparent recruitment and selection procedures so that the government entities do not just dish out internship vacancies under the table, but we will ensure that they are advertised, that they are put in the internet, so that those who require internship, Mr. Speaker, will be aware and they will apply. Thirdly, Mr. Speaker, there will be professionalism in ensuring that interns are provided with and acquire the practical experience required for their professional and career development. Mr. Speaker, we have seen very many interns out on social media saying that they're interns in a certain organization, and the work that they're given there, Mr. Speaker, is to be sent as an office messenger to drop things at a certain place. That is the work interns are doing. Others are probably even being told to go and buy tea and mandazi in the office. As a country, we must ensure that our interns are mentored and also given practical experience which they require for their professional and career development, and not just giving them as a requirement for their graduation, Mr. Speaker. The fourth thing is to ensure the efficiency of the internship programs on the basis of cost effectiveness, and that is why we've left it to the relevant cabinet secretary to consider what is practical for them to be paid as a stipend, Mr. Speaker, and also the insurance. Mr. Speaker, also the relevance, fit to purpose, and quality supervision through ensuring provision of appropriate and relevant work experience that is commensurate with the qualifications of an intern, Mr. Speaker. What we are also looking at is that an intern will not come to take up the job of a staff. We also get some interns who are then given so much workload that they do the work of the staff who is there. What needs to happen is that the staff need to work with the intern as they work together, but not overload them with so much work, with little stipend. They leave the office so late. You're not giving them, you're giving them a small stipend, or other institutions don't pay. As I shared in this house, Mr. Speaker, when I started moving this bill, when we were interns at KBC, we are the ones who needed to pay 1,000 to get internship, Mr. Speaker. And there are some interns who have come from very needy backgrounds. They have come from probably a different part of the country and don't live in Nairobi. They have to put up with relatives. The relatives have their own struggles at the family level. They don't even have money to give them for fare. So you find that an intern trekking long distances to go to a certain institution to intern, Mr. Speaker, and then not have lunch. You're overworking this intern, Mr. Speaker, and then later they again trek back home. And so this law ensures that we dignify those also who come to intern in our institutions. And lastly is to ensure adherence to government and public agency programs and activities. And this is because there is also what is required or what is expected of the intern once they are recruited at an institution. Mr. Speaker, we know as a country we have...
Now it is scattered all over, and there is need to harmonize the internship program so that the process of undertaking the internship becomes well guided in the laws, and it becomes easy to offer opportunities to young people. So, Honorable Speaker, the Public Service Internship Bill 2022, which was sponsored by the Honorable Naisula Lesuda, MP, is a bill for an act of parliament to make provision for internship of college and university graduates in the public sector, to provide hands-on training and acquisition of skills by graduates. The bill was published on the 16th of December 2022 and read a first time in the House on the 8th of March 2023, pursuant to the Standing Order 127-1. The bill was committed to the Departmental Committee on Labor for consideration and facilitation of public participation pursuant to the Standing Order 127. The clerk of the National Assembly placed advertisements in the print media on the 18th March 2023, seeking for comments from the public on the bill pursuant to the Article 118 of the Constitution. In addition to the request for memoranda from the public, the following stakeholders were requested to submit their views to the committee. 1, Office of the Attorney General and Department of Justice. 2, State Department for Public Service. 3, Public Service Commission. 4, Law Society of Kenya. And lastly, Kenya Law Reform Commission. Honorable Speaker, the committee received submissions from 1, the Honorable Naisula Lesuda, who is the sponsor of the bill. Then 2, the State Department for Public Service. 3, Public Service Commission. And 4, Law Society of Kenya. Honorable Speaker, the committee, having considered the bill and stakeholders' submissions, observed the following: that 1, the bill incorrectly placed the management of the internship program under the Cabinet Secretary responsible for matters related to labor. The committee proposed an amendment to provide that the responsible Cabinet Secretary shall be the Cabinet Secretary responsible for public service. 2, the bill seeks to guard against the enactment of several legislations to provide for internship within the public service and seeks to harmonize the salient principles to be observed by all offices in the public service in the recruitment of interns. 3, the term certificate has been used in 2 different contexts. 1, to mean the standard minimum qualification for internship, and the second as a certificate issued upon completion of the internship period. Then the 4th issue was there is need to amend clause 5, 1, to provide that the act shall apply to every public office as defined in Article 260 of the Constitution. Then 5, internship is not only aimed at professional registration, but also to acquire necessary skills and experience to enhance employability. And this the Honorable Member has really spoken to. And currently, Honorable Speaker, we have thousands of young people who have been engaged in this internship program. And what is happening across the country is that these young people are being offered a chance to know what happens in these public offices. And it is the surest way of ensuring that our country has sufficient people who are full of energy and who also understand how the job is done in these public offices. Because, Honorable Speaker, every day people are retiring in government. and those vacancies should be filled up by people who possess the necessary skills, but not just the skills, but also the experience that goes with those offices. We have very good success stories, Honorable Speaker, from those people who have been given internship opportunities. And going by what we have seen, if when we enact this law, I am sure more people will benefit, and especially the young people who come from the rural areas, because the opportunities that they've been getting through the Public Service Commission draws membership from across the country. And they are posted to different offices across the ministries. And we have very good reports coming from them and the exposure that they have gotten from these offices, which is going to help them begin life or even become more employable, or rather improve or enhance employability. Any internship period below 6 months may not be adequate for acquisition of relevant experience and skills and inculcating of public service values and ethos. Then 7, the current bill has no provision of the involvement of the private sector, compelling the private sector to take on interns and perhaps employing them permanently would create a financial burden to companies trying to stay afloat, as the number may be unsustainable. However, perhaps with the incentive from government, the companies may take and onboard the interns. Well, we believe that can also be provided for in subsequent legislation that does not have to involve this, because the Honorable Naisula dwelled on the public service sector, but we believe even the private sector, Honorable Speaker, if they are given an opportunity and incentives, they can provide chances for young people to get interns. Because, for instance, the number of people who work in the public sector, in the public service, are approximately 1 million. But this country has up to about 20 million people who are employed. So it means we have up to around 18 to 19 million who are employed in the private sector. So it means if the private sector is given incentives, which includes tax rebates, they can be able to accommodate many more young people and give them the necessary skills and experience, and therefore the energy, the skills, and the knowledge in these young people can be properly utilized, other than the congestion that comes with the opportunities that are available in the public sector. Then one of the other observations, Honorable Speaker, we made was that the bill will cure the mischief of exploitation of professionals like teachers, doctors, lawyers, who currently are taken on as unpaid interns in the private sector to gain experience, yet are struggling to repay the loans taken during their schooling. Honorable Speaker, there is a lot of exploitation. And we are discussing this bill at a time when Teacher Service Commission has terminated services of up to 700 JSS teachers. And it is very unfortunate for Teacher Service Commission to do that to young people who are just trying to speak out and say about how unfair it is for them not to be absorbed in the Teacher Service, with the Teacher Service Commission. Honorable Speaker, when the intern doctors went on strike, they stayed away from work for over 50 days. And they were claiming for as high, or rather, they were claiming for an amount as high as 206,000. They were never fired. They were never interdicted. They remained employees. But JSS teachers who have been earning 17,000 shillings per month, when they speak out, TSC interdicts them. They have show cause letters right now as we speak. And I believe it is the time this Honorable House calls the CS for Education and the Teacher Service Commission to appear before this House and to explain as the reasons as to why they have to be very unfair to these young people who are just trying to speak out and fight for what rightfully belongs to them. So I believe this proposal, this proposed legislation by the Honorable Naisula is going now to cure that, because it will provide for how much these interns should earn. You can imagine those of us who are in Kenyatta University, and several of us have been mentioned here. I don't want to repeat because you all know us. Yeah, I am told the deputy majority leader was in KU, but I never saw him. I never saw him there. Maybe he was there.
You were too young to have seen him. You were too young to have seen him. Don't throw those stones. Go ahead.
Yeah, those of us who are in KU, we were there. All of us were there. And yes, I can see another honorable members who was in KU. The doctors, yes, the doctors were there. The lawyers were there. The teachers were there. Yeah. We were sharing the same hostels. So when the doctors graduated, they go to an hospital, they are paid 206,000. But another teacher, yeah, whom you are sharing a hostel with, goes to a school, is given an internship, and is paid 17,000. It is unfair. So this bill, I believe, will cure those challenges, and it will provide for fairness in the...
As a country, we have two areas that really have done us good, but they're also our undoing. One of the areas is that we go and rush to court with everything. And so we actually paralyze counties and governments from performing duties. And then in the end, people ask, where are the services? It's because they've been derailed. I remember having a conversation with Governor Sakaja of Nairobi and asking, what are we going to do about the garbage collection? Somebody had gone to court and stopped the contract that they were about to enter with somebody who had won the bid to be able to help us sort out our garbage through recycling programs. So when we go to court or when we demonstrate, sometimes we demonstrate and then we injure ourselves. I look at Teacher Service Commission right now because that's the hot topic. And they had a number of interns. Normally they absorb the interns over 2 years. But I believe that they have a collective bargaining agreement to that effect. But I believe now that we're going to have the law that says the intern should not be more than 6 to 12 months, then that collective bargaining agreement will have to be renegotiated so that we are able to then absorb them in 12 months. I think to have an intern for 2 years is actually not right. Government should not allow for interns for over 2 years. We should be able to then look at, if we are going to absorb all the interns that we take in the education sector, then we have to make sure we provide the necessary budgets. And how do these budgets come? It will not be a 100% budget because you will have some teachers that are retiring. So we need to make sure that the money for interns is strictly used, and the monitoring and evaluation for intern budgets, which I understand this year's budget is going to be over 2 billion. We have to make sure that when we budget for interns, it is used for interns. It is not used for any other program within the public sector. I like that we will provide for sick leave, we will provide for maternity, we will provide for paternity. Because if we don't provide for that, then when an intern wants to be absorbed and she goes for the interview and she's pregnant, then you will find they will be looked at as a burden. But if it is provided for in law, then there will be no discrimination of anyone who is pregnant. And then illnesses catches at any point. You can walk into an interview absolutely healthy, and 6 months down the line, you're diagnosed with something. So I think we have to have a humane way of dealing with our employees, whether permanent or under intern programs. Now, when it comes to the country at large, I think there is an important need to do a census of our population, because that will also inform where we allocate the most budgets from the 2 billion budget that we have for interns. When we look at our population and we realize that we have the number of unemployed teachers is way higher than the number of unemployed doctors or nurses, then we know that the absorption of interns in the education sector or in the medical sector has to be, the budgets have to be given relative to the amount of people that are unemployed. If we do not conduct a census on the number of people that we have unemployed in our country and the qualifications that they bear and the experiences that they bear, then we are not able to effectively provide the budgets to actually grow the specific industry. I believe that we need to budget based on the training of our population, and we also need to guide our population on where we have overtrained personnel and we need more people in a specific sector. I remember there was a time when Singapore was looking at a certain area of their country as they were progressing, and they realized that that particular area, not many people were buying into the development and the growth and prosperity of Singapore. And what did they realize? That particular area, the people were professionals, were either lawyers or doctors, accountants. So what they did is they made sure that they made that into a hub to provide those services. So we need to be able to think forward and think of how we place resources. We place resources based on the population. We inform the population. There's no need, when you have probably 2 million teachers that are unemployed and our absorption rate is 20%, that we encourage more training of teachers. We need to then look at them and counsel them. And you know, counseling for future career prospects is very important. And as long as a country we don't do that, then we will be taking interns that we can't absorb. Now, having said that, we also have to realize that if the government can only employ X amount, then we need to figure out how are we going to work with the private sector? How are we going to make it lucrative for the private sector to buy into the internship program that the government wants to have? What are the incentives that we're giving the private sector to absorb our interns? Because, you know, having 10 million citizens out there unemployed, and I guess when the government is looking for bilateral contracts to try and export labor, it's also recognizing that our absorption rate of the unemployed has been actually dwindling. So we also have to make sure that as we do this budget and pass the budget and the finance bill, we need to make sure that as a country, we are going to protect the jobs that we have and the corporates that we have. Because if we don't protect the jobs that we have and the corporates that we have and the manufacturing industry and the financial industry, then we are going to have people moving into neighboring countries. And when people start moving into neighboring countries, what does that mean with the COMESA agreement? Is that we will become consumers, our people will not have jobs. So we need to find that balance. And I pray that we find that balance, because if we don't find that balance, then we're going to have a shrink, and even more shrinking unemployment. We will not be able to absorb the interns, and we will not be able to basically attract donor corporate investors and manufacturers. And even our own Kenyan manufacturers right now are looking for where can they make the most money. So I think there is an importance for the people that economically advise the government on how we're going to go forward, to actually start taking off their blinders and thinking outside the box. Because when you think you know it all, you could be actually creating problems that will not only affect us now, but will affect us for generations to come. Because if an industry closes down or an industry moves out of this country, to bring it back will be impossible. So I think we should have a high retention rate of whatever we have that is...
Court's pronouncement on this internship program, especially in the JSS program, where the court nullified the internship program because there exists no legal framework for this program. Madam Speaker, this bill will try to sort out this. Madam Speaker, we also know that the basis on which the TSC engaged the interns, it was actually not internship program. It was employment, because, Madam Speaker, there's no way you can, the way my understanding on internship is that you are working under a mentor. But on this JSS program, there was nobody mentoring these interns. So, Madam Speaker, let it be clear that what the TSC did on JSS interns, it was not internship programs. It was employment, because there was nobody to mentor the interns who are employed by the TSC. Having said that, Madam Speaker, we all know that the importance of this program, because the purpose of internship is to ensure that the fresh graduates, the graduates who have graduated fresh from the university, are able to acquire the necessary skills and experience to enhance their employability. Madam Speaker, the civil service, our civil service as it is the best trained and skilled civil service, and therefore it is the best that our interns can learn from it. Madam Speaker, the internship also ensures that the students are inculcated with values and ethos in our civil service. And Madam Speaker, it's my hope that our civil servants will inculcate the positive values to our interns. Madam Speaker, this bill also enumerates the responsibilities and the entitlements of the interns. When an intern joins the civil service or the public service, it will be clear what his or her responsibility is, as well what his or her entitlement is in terms of stipends. And Madam Speaker, on the issue of stipends, I would wish probably if this can be clear and we enumerate the minimum stipends so that we avoid exploitation, just like we have the minimum wage bill. It's also important that we have the minimum stipend that the interns in the public service will be earning. Madam Speaker, the issue of course, the entitlements like the sick leave. Madam Speaker, there's no way that we can deny the interns sick leave just because they are not permanent and pensionable, and also the issue of the paternity and maternity leave, and the issue of personal accident insurance cover is included in this bill. Madam Speaker, also the issue of the bill also handles the issue of disciplinary procedures. Once the intern joins the public service, he or she is bound by the rules and regulations of that government entity. And once he or she breaks the rules, he or she will be subjected to the necessary disciplinary procedures. Again, Madam Speaker, we could see that the TSC, because there was probably no legal framework, was not able to take the striking interns into the proper disciplinary procedures. Madam Speaker, this bill also stipulates the ways of recruitment of interns to ensure that it is transparency, to ensure that there is accountability, to ensure that there is fairness, and that every intern from every corner of this country has the same probability of being absorbed into the public service as intern as any other. And therefore, it is our expectation that we pass this bill. Once any recruitment takes place, it will reflect the gender and regional balance, and it will not be skewed. And the basis of recruitment will not be on who you know, or the basis of nepotism, and reduce corruption in terms of recruitment of the internship. Madam Speaker, I also support the issue of incentives to the private entities, and at the same time, if there is a way that we should make it mandatory for every government entity to absorb interns at any particular time, so that, because the idea, Madam Speaker, is to absorb as many as possible, if not 100%. And therefore, the issue of making it mandatory for every government entity to absorb the interns should be looked at. And finally, Madam Speaker, I also support the issue of timelines, such that it's not too short for the interns to absorb the necessary skills and experience that it is required, but also it's not too long, such that we have career interns. So the issue of 1 year is good enough. At least 1 year, every intern will have absorbed the necessary skills, and then after 1 year, you are fit to go and utilize your skills in the other fields, so that we have vacancies to absorb other interns. Madam Speaker, with those few remarks, I support.
The Honorable James Nyikal, member for Seme. Dr. Nyikal.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to contribute to this motion. And let me start by congratulating Honorable Lesuda for bringing this very important bill at this time. Madam Speaker, this is an extremely important bill at this time. The issue of internship, and because of lack of a legal framework and because of unemployment amongst the young people, actually has been used to exploit young people who are qualified. And therefore, even the opportunities for taking part in internship has not been in any way regulated. There has been no equity. So this bill then brings in some legal framework. There has been some legal framework in relation to professional regulatory authorities, but it has been limited. And even that has now been confused with the general internship, and that was the crux of the matter in the recent doctor strike. Therefore, Madam Speaker, I support this bill because it actually addresses very important issues in this matter. One is the definition of an intern. It actually takes a fairly good definition of an intern, and it brings out that you can actually have 3 people who are doing internship: those who are doing it during their training, and those who have actually finished their training, and those who actually require it as for registration in professional bodies. And so those must be taken into consideration, because that's where the problem is. Because you have some people also, even earlier than that, who, as part of their training, need some exposure to industry before they do the final examinations and therefore subsequent graduation. Those are also internship. So this bill has actually attempted to do that. If you look at clause 3, that has been taken care of. Again, it is the objective of the internship. Why are we putting young people through internship? Colleagues have actually indicated whether we want them to learn, we want them as part of our workforce, we want them because they need to be trained. If those have also been actually taken care of in this bill, if you look at clause 3. The other important thing is the period and structure of training. Madam Speaker, there's been an attempt in the definition between 3 months and 1 year. But I think we will have to look at, particularly in cases of professional requirements, they will have to be involved to determine how long the period should be and what is the structure of training. Because if you have bodies like the Medical Practitioner Dentist Council, the Engineers Institute, the Board of Architects and Quantity Surveyors, BORACs, the Law Society of Kenya and this Council for Legal Education, those bodies will require very clear time periods. They will require clear structures of training and clear structures of mentorship. For example, in the medical profession, the interns actually have to do specific, undertake specific activities which they must exhibit competence in during that period. I think even in engineering, I think that is required so that you actually have structured ways, you have logbooks that are actually in place that they have to fill to...
This bill, which is very timely. Madam Speaker, of late, we have seen so many interns in the streets demonstrating, starting from the medical interns to the teachers in JSS, and maybe there are others on the way. And I think this internship business should be put in a legal framework so that it is structured and we'll not see such cases of strikes by the interns. Madam Speaker, an intern is, or internship is supposed to be a launching pad for one who is in a career. And Madam Speaker, it is very clear that when you are an intern, you are not a full-time employee. You are just practicing. You are learning what you are trying to put in practice, what you obtained in a classroom in theory, and you are going to the field or you are going to a work environment to go and practice, to go and see whether the learning took place in a learning environment. But Madam Speaker, what is very clear is that the internship business has been misunderstood to an extent that those who go for internship, their workload is not very clear. Some are given full-time duties, and the compensation is not commensurate with what they are supposed to be, with the duties they are performing. And what happens? We see them going to the streets because they feel they are misused. They feel their rights are violated, and it is not in tandem with what they earn at the end of the month. So, Madam Speaker, it is very clear, it is very important that in this bill, we look at very important ingredients which will add or which will make this bill or which will make this internship very, very structured. One is the issue of the workload. It should be very clear that when you go or when you are taken in as an intern, what is your job description and who is your supervisor? These people are on training and they should be having a supervisor, and their work should be cut out so that they are very clear from the beginning what is expected of them and what they are supposed to be doing. The other day, we saw the teachers, the JSS teachers in the streets. They were demonstrating because they felt that when they went to school, the workload was equivalent to the rest of the teachers who are on permanent and pensionable. So they felt that, they went to the streets. And it is unfortunate, Madam Speaker, that the Teacher Service Commission went ahead to sack them. Who are they sacking? Those who are just trainees, who are not supposed to be, they were supposed to be called and explained to, they are still on training, so you are not supposed to be sacking them. You are supposed to call them back to class and explain to them what is required of them, the ethos, the requirements, the ethical requirements of a job, because they are still on training. They have not reached that level where they are supposed to be sacked because they are not employees of the Teacher Service Commission. They are interns. So I think the TSC should withdraw those letters, and the interns have actually accepted to go back to class and now help them to learn, train them to be better teachers. And Madam Speaker, also, teachers go for teaching practice. And they go, primary school teachers, they go for teaching practice. Secondary school teachers, they go for teaching practice. So the issue of internship is an illegality in its essence because they have already gone through internship. What should happen is that I wish they can relook at that section of the policy and ensure that maybe during the teaching practice, they go for a longer period and they give them some stipend so that they do away with this business of internship. Madam Speaker, apart from that is the transition after internship. What next? Do you just finish and pack your bags and say, now I've been trained, I've learned, I am very competent, so what next? Do I just go back and wait indefinitely for a job? We should put structures in place so that an institution can take in the number of interns, as many interns, and those interns transit to the job market so that once you are done with your internship, now you are upgraded and you are given an opportunity now to serve as a full-time employee of that institution. Also, Madam Speaker, the private sector should also be given incentives because they also support, so that they also support these, they support the interns and they take them in because they are also part of, they contribute to the employment grid in Kenya. So it should not just be the issue of public institutions, but we should also come up with an internship policy, a bill, which caters for everybody. And it puts the requirements for the do's and the don'ts for any intern in any organization across the board in the entire country so that there is unity and there is a clear policy on how this internship is going to be operationalized in its entirety. Madam Speaker, it should also, these interns should also be supervised. There should be a supervision, there should be somebody to supervise them and give a report so that it is not just an internship, you participate, and then when you are done, you are gone, there is nothing, you can't even have evidence to show that this is the performance, so that even those interns take their job seriously and they know the consequences of absconding duty or the consequences of any other illegality they find themselves in their, once you serve as an intern. And Madam Speaker, I will have some amendments to bring when the amendments will be, the section will be done. And let me use this chance to just support the bill and congratulate the Member of Parliament and end my case there so that I can give somebody else an opportunity to make a contribution. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, honorable members. Next is the Honorable Paul Nabuin, member for Turkana North.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to give my voice into this bill. On the onset, Madam Speaker, I want to thank and appreciate the move of this bill for coming up with this legal framework that is going to fill a gap, a lacuna in law that has existed for a long time. Madam Speaker, our country is known for producing very good human resource in the region. But the gap that has existed for a long time is how these young people who come out from the university or from colleges can put in practice the knowledge. Once they are done with the internship, and I think I have just mentioned that they should be we should have a policy that helps them to transition to full employment. With that, Mr. Speaker, I support this bill. Thank you.
The Honorable MP for Kericho, Madam Beatrice Kemei.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to stand. And on the onset, I support this bill, the Public Service Internship Bill 2022 by Honorable Naisula Lesuda. And I want to say thank you so much, Honorable, for bringing it at the time when we have issues with unemployment in this country, where when you look at it, over 10 million people are unemployed. These are our youth, and apart from youth, these are also the young adults. Honorable Speaker, when we talk of this bill, I'm impressed by the fact that it is speaking to the graduates from colleges, universities, who have certificate, diploma, degrees, and so forth. With the internship program, they will add to their skills, being there for 12 months. They will add to the experience so that when it comes to employment, at least they will talk of an experience of 1 year. Honorable Speaker, this bill has come at a time when the Teacher Service Commission has done something that I condemn with the strongest terms possible. Yesterday, Honorable Speaker, when I listened to this fact that 742 interns or who are in internship engagement have been terminated, I felt sad. And not only that, Honorable Speaker, I'm even more sad that out of the 742, 164 comes from Kericho County. That is 22.1%. Honorable Speaker, what does that mean? Does it mean it is only from Kericho who went to the streets to speak and to ask for their rights? 164. Mr. Speaker, sir, what is the TSC County Director saying about this? Because I'm sure he's the one in charge, and the sub-county directors. Does it mean, Honorable Speaker, that the head teachers and the principals are the ones who are actually blaming all this? Looking at the other counties with 0 interns being terminated, and others too, and maybe for Samburu 40 of them, and it is very sad. To me, that is malice. To me, that is witch hunting, and I call upon the TSC to still relook at the case of the interns. The other day, we had the doctors for over 2 months, but none of them were terminated. But here, for the TSC, I request that they still look into this issue. And Honorable Speaker, the Committee on Education should also come forth and look into this issue. I'm so sad, and I feel more sad because of that. And maybe to add on this, Honorable Speaker, I would also say that the interns should be supervised, should be guided, should be encouraged, should not be given so much work compared to what they are actually, the stipend they are getting. And not to forget, Honorable Speaker, these interns, when we talk of, maybe when the time comes, the Honorable Member should spell it out very clearly, or an amendment. We have those with certificate, those with diploma, and those with degrees. The stipend, should it be the same for all of them, or how is it to be? At least some framework should be put in place in line with this. And I would also want to ask that, and when that time comes, we also look at this point whereby those who finished maybe 5 years or 10 years ago, are they still to be observed? They should not be discriminated upon. Looking into, putting into consideration that many of our people completed or graduated from colleges and universities or tertiaries over 10 years ago, but they are not employed. So when this program comes or this opportunity comes, they should not be discriminated upon. I would also ask organizations who are actually observing these interns, whenever there is an opportunity, those who actually were engaged in internship program in these organizations should be given the first priority because they have learned about the organization they have served. I would actually plead that they be given the opportunity. And I'm still, when that time comes for amendment, something should also come forth that is going to cover for the private organizations. These are also the organizations, the sector that observes most of our unemployed people. But at least a policy or a regulation to guide them also when it comes to issues of stipend, the length of the internship, issues to do with other benefits like the insurance, and even those who are eligible for the same. Otherwise, I support this bill in a big way, and once more, I say congratulations, Mheshimiwa. Thank you.
The Honorable Irene Mayaka.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for the opportunity. Honorable Speaker, I also stand to join my other colleagues in supporting this very progressive bill by the Honorable Lesuda, and we want to really thank her for bringing this bill to the floor of the House. Honorable Speaker, one of the things that I really like about this bill is that it seeks to have a proper process and structure on how internship is managed in this country, and specifically in the public service sector. Honorable Speaker, I would just like to mention some of the clauses that I find very progressive. One of them being the Declaration of Opportunities, which is clause number 6. Clause number 8, which talks about a management committee of the internship. Clause number 11, which speaks about that the interns should be provided with personal accident insurance cover for the valid for the period of internship. Honorable Speaker, I think these are very progressive because it then speaks directly to the management of internship and ensuring that the human resource departments in the public service are giving these interns their specific protection in terms of the cover, and that the procedure within which it has been laid down is properly followed because now it is covered in the bill. Honorable Speaker, this will also ensure that we avoid cherry picking when it comes to internship procedures, that each department decides on its own how they want to manage interns. This will make sure that we are actually doing this in a process that is managed centrally and that can be able to be referenced back to the bill, and especially once it becomes an act. Honorable Speaker, there's however something that I really feel we should borrow from the private sector in terms of how they manage internship and trainees. Because in the private sector, they not only have internships for graduates, but they also have something called the management trainee. And this is especially practiced in the banking industry. Because by doing that, then what they do is that they recruit fresh graduates who are also trained to be in the management space. Because right now, if you want to get into a management job, it's one of the conditions is that you must have 10 years working experience. But Honorable Speaker, we also want to encourage our young people to quickly get into the management space so that they're not only employed as clerks, but that they also get an opportunity to be actual managers within this working space. And I feel like this is something that public service sector should actually borrow from the private sector so that we encourage more and more young people to get into the management space as early as we can. Honorable Speaker, and this is because even when you look in Parliament right now, we do have young people who are parliamentarians. They're not waiting until they're much older to become parliamentarians. So let's encourage young people to also get into leadership spaces as early as we can. Honorable Speaker, the other thing that I would really like for us to borrow is best practice from countries like England, China, Thailand, in how they do their internship, because what they do for them is that there's an automatic absorption. And I'm hoping that in future, when this becomes more progressive and the structures become more engraved in our public service, that we can have a process where, when it comes to absorption into permanent positions, the interns are given first priority. The other thing that I would really like to encourage as Honorable Speaker is that when people graduate, we have a process of first in, first out. What I mean by this is the people who graduate first are considered before we consider the younger ones. Because right now the practice that we have is that you'll see that most of the advertisements for internship positions will tell you that they want interns who are 24 years, between 18 and 24 years. And yet there are Kenyans who did not have an opportunity to immediately go into college. They managed to go into college when they could afford it or when they were able to. And they don't get these opportunities because they're considered to be too old. So we need to take into consideration the people who graduate, even if they don't do so at the time when they're considered to be of a young age. Honorable Speaker, so for me to enable at least one more person to speak, I just want to stop there and once again support this particular bill and hope that even when we come for the third reading, that we will not make too many amendments that will wash down the initial idea of what the Honorable Lesuda intended. I thank you.
The Honorable Member of Parliament for Kachiliba, Titus Lote.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me the opportunity to also contribute to this very important bill. And I want to take this opportunity as well to thank my colleague and also the Member of Parliament for Samburu West for coming up with this kind of very progressive bill. Mr. Speaker, I think the way interns are being recruited in this country now and the way interns are being managed in this country require such a progressive bill. But before, Mr. Speaker, I even talk about the internship proposal in terms of this bill, I'll wish to condemn and join my colleagues to condemn the Teacher Service Commission for the enormous act that they have done to the intern teachers. These are demonstrated to the public that interns are indeed not protected by any law and that interns are being underlooked by everybody in this society, Mr. Speaker. You can actually realize that when the interns went to the streets to picket, as provided for by the Constitution that covers every Kenyan, including them, they were fired, 742 of them. Mr. Speaker, this does not tell me that in the teaching fraternity, teachers are the only ones that have ever demonstrated. I am sure and I know teachers, employed teachers have demonstrated several times. They have expressed their reservations to their employment status, but they were never, and they will never be sacked unilaterally the way they have done to the interns. And so this law will definitely protect internship in future. In that stroke, Mr. Speaker, I will wish to ask the Teacher Service Commission to reconsider hiring back those interns, because those interns are protected by our Constitution that allow every Kenyan to picket under Article number 39 of our Constitution, Mr. Speaker. Two, Mr. Speaker, if we look at how interns are recruited now, internships now are recruited based on who do you know, mambo ya kujuana in this place. If I am an MD, if I am the CEO, If I am the director, I will have my relatives come in as interns with a very veiled understanding that after some time they will be employed. That is what happens now. And that's why if you go to offices, you find the director, all the interns under either relatives or close family friends. That is a way of ensuring that the people that are not having connections in this country can never get employed, Mr. Speaker. Who will employ people from your constituency who do not have big people in offices here who can take them fast as interns? And I think this law then will have to cover for that, so that the people from Kacheliba constituency, where I come from, where we do not have directors, where we do not have CEOs.
Order, Honorable Lotte.
Yes.
Order. Honorable Lotte, you will have 7 minutes when the House resumes on this.
Thank you.
Debate.
So I will wish to say that this...
Order. Once you are... Order. Honorable members, the time being 1 p.m., this House stands adjourned until today, Wednesday, the 12th of June, 2024, at 2:30 p.m.
Session of the Plenary Assembly and related meetings of the FPICGRL, which took place from 15th to 19th April 2024 in Livingstone, Zambia. The role of the Parliament in adapting to climate change in the Great Lake regions was the theme of the event. This theme would not have come at a better time considering the recent weather changes owing to climate change. The discussions revolved around recognizing and addressing the impact of climate change within the Great Lakes region. The Plenary Assembly underscored the pivotal role of parliamentarians in the foundation of crucial decisions and effective solutions for adaptation and climate actions in the region. This shows the endeavor of the region to tackle the challenges presented by the climate change. In conclusion, the forum extends its heartfelt condolences and stands in solidarity with the governments, parliaments and people of Kenya, Tanzania, Rwanda, and Burundi, who are currently grappling with the devastating effects of the heavy rains and flooding. Senator Ali Roba, Senator for Mandera County.
Thank you. Senator Sosi, do you want to make a comment on this statement?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity. Mr. Speaker, this statement is very important and very timely, talking about matters of heavy rains and flooding within the Great Lakes region. Mr. Speaker, the issue of flooding has not just affected Kenya, but indeed quite a number of countries have been affected. In fact, last year, we had a very serious problem in Malawi. We had a very serious problem in Mozambique. And I think this is a wake-up call that Africa needs to take matters of climate change very seriously, because this flooding is one of the consequences of the effect of climate change. So Africa countries, Kenya included, needs to take the issue of climate change very seriously, issues of afforestation very seriously, and issues of human interference to critical water catchment areas very seriously. So this statement by the Chair of Finance is very timely, and how I wish that the countries that are members of this forum would have a collective response towards matters of climate change, matters of flooding in our region. And most importantly, Mr. Speaker, the issue of how to deal with the humanitarian situation that arises as a result of this flooding. I saw on TV that some countries which have been affected have been unable to deal with the humanitarian situation that has arisen out of this crisis. So how I expected that this, Mr. Speaker,
Senator Edokech.
members are consulting loudly.
That no member shall be standing in the House unless they are speaking, and I'm seeing a lot of members in the other side standing and is making this place a market. It is interfering with my friend Senator Ososi, Mr. Speaker. Can you help protect him?
Yes, Honorable Senators, if you look at the standing orders keenly, you will understand how you should conduct yourselves in the House, especially when a member is up and making his contribution. No other senator should be studying at that particular time. And also conversing on the areas. You shouldn't sit down and discuss with your colleague. So thank you, Senator Andy, for bringing these members to order. Senator Sos, proceed and conclude.
Mr. Speaker, you know, members are excited because Senator Keroche is putting on ODM colors. So, and you know, Azimio and ODM colors. So I think they're excited about that. Welcome home, Senator Keroche. So, Mr. Speaker, allow me to wind up my contribution on this to say that humanitarian situation in some countries is wanting, and how this forum should seek for support from the global community on addressing the humanitarian situation arising from flooding and related risks. So, Mr. Speaker, this statement is timely, and I want to support the statement by my friend Robert, who has been very, very, very vocal on matters of division of revenue to support against the proposal of 1 man, 1 shilling. But Mr. Speaker, we'll have an opportunity to talk about this because the other regions will also have a say. It is not a matter of Mount Kenya and Northern Kenya alone. Other regions will also have a say on how we want our revenue to be shared. So, Mr. Speaker, I support.
Senator Onyonka Richard.
Mr. Speaker, I would like to reiterate what my brother Ososi has raised about the important matters affecting our environment, the issues of flooding. The reality on the ground is that, Mr. Speaker, we actually do not know whether we are going to have a typhoon, whether we are going to have excessive amounts of rainfall and all that. I think it's something that this House, I believe, Mr. Speaker, the House has to be engaged and seized on this matter. And I would like to say, Mr. Speaker, that even when my colleagues have discussed issues about what is supposed to be done in relation to global warming and the challenges coming out of it, Mr. Speaker, I feel that our country is not prepared for eventualities like this. And I would like to persuade my colleagues who sit in the Environmental Committee in the Senate to engage themselves and make sure that we can even set up a task force which is supposed to be engaged and discussing, because many of our areas within the rural areas, leave alone Nairobi, Mr. Speaker, where our people live, we are having challenges, and it looks like nobody is quite aware or nobody is going to give a way forward on what we should do. Mr. Speaker, if you discuss issues pertaining to emergency funding, whether the county government should engage, what are the percentages, emergency funding from the national government, we don't have clarity on those matters. So I would wish and hope that this House can engage itself proactively and set up a committee which, Mr. Speaker, I would recommend that it stays in office the whole final year, whether it means we draft a legislation on that. I think it's an important part that in our country, Mr. Speaker, we now need to have an emergency committee, if possible, which will be given assignments, not emergency when we are having floods only. Chairman, you notice we have people who die because of these emergencies, whether it's a building collapsing, whether it is vehicles, for example, when the vehicles are running and ramming into each other, Mr. Speaker. So these are things that I think we need to proactively engage ourselves. And I say thank you for giving me this opportunity. I wanted to agree with Honorable Sotsi that I give my chairman, Honorable Roba, credit and immense credit, and my vice chair who was not able to pronounce herself, but she quietly whispered to me that she agrees with me. We cannot discuss, Chair, issues pertaining to one man, 1 shilling, 1 vote without looking at all the Kenyans and what they think and what they view. Otherwise, we will consider it a nullity. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Sigei Wakiri.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I would like to also applaud the Honorable Chairperson of the Finance Committee for such a timely statement, because the situation of not only the places that have been affected by the heavy rains is bad, but it has affected entirely the whole country. We are talking about schools. Some of them are yet to open. Some of them might not open because the entire structure of such institutions have been washed away or are still in flooded areas. We're talking about roads, Mr. Speaker, which are no longer accessible. The road all the way from Maimayu running through Narok to Bomet, where I represent, for a very long time, have been a victim of such situations. And considering the fact that this has affected almost entire economic of the country, we are saying, as we look through the mitigation measures that the country and the government is taking, as members of this House, as members of the public, as environmentalists, we should now continue with the conversation about the effects of climate change. And as we deal with the issue of planting trees that the Kenya Kwanza government is pushing, it is a long term. What options do we have in the short term to ensure that we support the effects of climate change, and we also make sure that we are prepared in such situations? As we speak right now, Mr. Speaker, the other day, the typhoon that went through some areas in the coastal region has taken away lives of people. Were we not prepared? Had we been notified? What action did we take? So, Mr. Speaker, this particular statement is very, very timely, and it helps us to look beyond just the rain. Let us also look at other devastating natural calamities that could come along the way. We are being warned that after the rains, after July, there is a possibility of long dry spell, and that should also sound warning to the government, to all those who are responsible, to make sure that in terms of preparedness, in terms of reaching out for partners to support, we utilize the resources so that when that time comes, we are not got in a situation where we are unable to support, we are unable to protect ourselves, and we are unable to sustain the livelihoods of the very vulnerable people